All right, folks, it is time for our favorite podcast. Although after today, maybe it'll be number two. I brought on Luke Russell from Russell Media and also from the Soulful podcast to come on and talk about both his marketing skills, which are directed to lawyers, and his podcast, which is for everybody that loves lawyer stories, the ins and outs. How are you doing today, Luke?
Yes. Oh, I'm doing great. Thank you, Greg.
So Luke and I know each other for a couple of years through the Mass Tort Made Perfect world. And he actually did some marketing for me, so I know him, and I'm holding him out there as one of the guys, one of the firms that I trust, and you need to trust who you use, and we'll get into that.
Sweet.
So one of you, let's start talking, I got one little intro, quick little intro. I researched this and all this stuff, all right? Now, I'm born in the 60s and my dad he's actually still a lawyer, 91 years old. So I grew up with a lawyer, and when I grew up, it was like lawyer advertising it wasn't there. There was you could not advertise. As my mother would say, it was verboten. Not only was it verboten, it was just frowned upon. People like lawyers advertising, that's horrible. But the reality was that the small law firms, the new law firms, couldn't really compete. It was unfair. And we have the First Amendment. So 1977, I'll shortchange this, Supreme Court said, no go, you can't, prohibit lawyer advertising. Bates versus the Board of Arizona or something like that. And since then, we've all grown up seeing billboards, bus benches. Some lawyers were like getting into, the yellow pages. A lot of us don't even know what that was. And that cost a lot of money. So even if you were even if you were like, all right, I'm one of these new startups trying to compete, it was so expensive that it was almost cost prohibitive. You would take like a little teeny ad in the yellow pages for $5,000 for the year and cross your fingers. But now we're 1989. I invented the World Wide Web. And then everything went crazy after that.
Exactly. That's my understanding of history as well.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for validating that. Now,
but I just have to clarify, I wasn't alive to personally witness that, but I do accept those facts.
Okay, thank you. It's been validated and verified through numerous channels. And you know what? I'm going to just say this. There's so many legal marketers out there. So many of them are shady. They don't know what they're doing. And even though the Supreme Court said, yes, you can advertise, every state regulates advertising. And if you do it wrong, you don't follow the rules, or you hire a legal marketing firm that doesn't do it correctly, you're on the hook, okay? So you got to pay attention. You just don't hire anybody. Every day I'm getting 5 emails at least from lawyer marketers who I never heard of, and they're promising me everything or whatever. And it's just like delete, 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 delete. But I'm bringing on Luke, who you can trust, who I know and is one of the best and one of the most honest guys out there. So, all right, I've done a lot of talking. Luke, tell me about Russell Media. How do you start it? Let's talk about the early days, where and how we gotten to where we are now.
Yeah. So I think for me, all of my web work started when I was in high school. Unlike my peers, most of my learning happened at home. I'd go to school and I could get by with decent grades, but I'm not sure how much I was learning. But I'd go home and I'd study programming, photography, music, and writing. And then I started having people, I remember at a radio station, reach out to me and say, hey, Luke, would you build us a website? And I wish I had a screenshot of what I built, because it was the most visually torturous thing I can imagine. It's just like this neon green with black with weird shading. And it was terrible, but I got them to pay for, a database programming class at the local university in exchange. And I started this early skill set in particular, it was writing and coding, that I was like, this is stuff I'm willing to make money on. And so I was getting clients in high school, and but then in 2009, I had dropped out of business school because I want to learn how to start a business, and not many people there actually had ever started a business. I was learning how to write memos. And I remember my academic advisors like, Luke, I think this is a really bad decision to drop out. And I'm thinking, but nobody here, not nobody, but there were two adjunct professors who actually had run or ran their own businesses. And everyone else was just in the academia. And so I dropped out, took several months, and then started my company. And the LLC for my company is a single page LLC. I've never renamed it. I thought for years I would, but now it's kind of it's a really good emblem and symbol of who we are and what we do. Because when I started, I had people saying, Luke, you should do websites because that's where my skill set was. But I didn't want to be just another website company. To me, it was like, I don't like doing something you can just go get from another vendor. And so I was like, you know what's not out there? And this is before all the Wix of the modern era. We can just go out and easily set up your own little website. I was like, you know what people need is one-page websites. So I started my company, a single page LLC, and I was like, I'm going to sell one-page websites. The problem is what I learned, people who just need one page for a website don't have a whole lot of money and they're not going to prioritize spending it on a website. So I made $800 my first year. And and so it wasn't going so strong. But what I love about that is I got into the digital marketing space, and I've had this sense of like, I want to actually offer something that other people don't have. And so we've shifted over the years in what we offer, how we offer it. And that's just morphed. It's always, yeah, obviously I want to make money. Like we all want to get paid. But I don't like getting paid when I'm just, well, because people are like, well, how are you different? And it's really easy for me to articulate why we're different from others. And because I don't offer the exact same things everybody else does, and we have a different approach. And so when I think about how I got into this, and I had a business consultant, how I got in the legal space, 2011, I had a business consultant who is friends with Ken Hardison, who has Pilma, who's an attorney and built this organization. And I show up in Myrtle Beach or somewhere in South Carolina to a mastermind of lawyers. And I don't know squat about PI lawyers other than the fact that I've heard that they're ambulance chasers. Like, that's all I know. So I'm in this room telling them how to, about marketing. And I don't, it is kind of funny, but apparently one lawyer heard me, liked what I was saying. 9 months later, hired me. And I was a contracted director of marketing for several years, and then doing mass torts and PI. Went off and just focused on my own thing in 2016. And so now our specialty is social media advertising. We do a ton of PI and we do a lot of mass torts, but we actually only do a couple mass torts now. We've kind of shifted our model. But anyways, so that's a long explanation, but we're just like, where did we come from? We've taken all these different things, but it's this always been this through line of, I want to offer something that when you compare me to another agency, it's actually, we're offering something different. It might be to the same end for generating cases, but you can't go out and hire another agency that's going to give you what we give you. And I love that.
And I want to get into the details of that. So here I am, I'm a 56-year-old guy. I have so many colleagues that I call it the over 50, the plus 50 club. And a lot of, listen, everybody gets kind of comfortable doing what they're doing, but time goes on and maybe your practice isn't what it used to be. Maybe, the competitors, the new kids on the block are just stealing, or maybe, the laws are changing and you just can't, they won't let you do what we're doing and making money. And you're saying to yourself, what am I going to do now? Too young to retire. And, I jumped in. I remember Brian Ailes, Stocks Law Firm. Yeah, I'd referred him a case right before the 3M, and they called me up and they're like, are you doing the 3M stuff? And I'm like, Googling what's 3M. I'm like, yeah, of course I'm doing the 3M stuff. What are you, crazy? Yeah. But that was my personality. And a lot of my buddies, they just cannot kind of grasp all the good things that could happen by calling you, setting up a conference. And you touched on the fact that you do mass tort marketing and BI, or what we call single event. So I want to focus on like, what are the different, when people are like calling you up and you're talking single event, or they read about it, what is single event marketing versus mass tort marketing?
Yeah, so the single event is going to be really your accidents, injuries stemming from some sort of accident, whether that's your car accident, truck accident, TBIs, nursing home abuse, neglect, those kinds of things. That's what we focus on with our single event PI side. on mass torts, we used to do everything, and that was when we looked a little more like other agencies, and which was probably why we had some frustrating years, even though we did really well as an agency and did really good on results. We were doing every single mass tort, and this is like the pharmaceutical litigation. And so now what we are doing is we've actually pared down, and at the moment we're primarily only doing NEC, which is the baby formula work, and we're actually not even launched yet, because it's taking us almost 3 months to build out a campaign that's going to be unlike what anyone else out there is running. And then we're also doing sex abuse work, where we're building out something there. And what we do, so again, sex abuse, I mean, it's a mass tort, but also really different, because it's not really, it's mass in terms of there's a lot of victims and survivors, but it's not a consolidated litigation like, the NEC litigation is looking to form, or we have with Zantac or hernia mesh. So very, in the sense, they're very different, but it's also very much the plaintiff civil litigation. And what we are doing for all of them, what's in common is it's all education-based marketing. That's where we are strong and dominate is that we're really good at educating people and connecting with people. And so when we were always just doing lead generation, honestly, there's a lot of run-of-the-mill agencies. And I don't mean that derogatorily, just like there's a lot of people who do just lead gen, but there's a lot of missed claimants, because that only connects with certain individuals. And so yeah, anyways, I think I answered your question there, Greg, with
okay, but I want to dig a little deeper into this. All right, so I mean, this is kind of coming out of left field. NEC baby formula, everybody's reading about the baby formula. We didn't have enough.
Yep.
What are you talking about? What's your campaign with the baby formula case?
Yeah, so this is for preemies who were given specific types of baby formula that developed NEC, and then so I mean the harm done to the babies has been pretty extreme. And what happened, a lot of, like, you have these I mean, I think you had Mike Papantonio on to talk about the litigation here, right? I think if I saw,
Good.
Yeah, so yeah, so that's what we're talking about here. And the what we're doing is, and it's not ready yet, but we've partnered with a Black-led law firm to work to build out a culturally conscious and sensitive campaign, because the fact is it disproportionately affects people of color. And so rather than go out and build a campaign that looks like what everybody else does, we're going to say, like, look, here's the stakeholders, here are the people who are actually affected. We're partnering with a variety of folks around the country to build something beautiful that when I say beautiful, I use that more not because this topic, it's a sad, heavy, horrific situation, but in the face of that, we're saying, no, you know what, we're going to partner with the people who are affected by this and who understand the communities that are affected. And so that's what we're really doing with that. And so that's when I talk about NEC and the baby formula, we're not talking about shortages. We're talking about the litigation that's forming to represent families who have had littles dealing with NEC. And so that's what we're doing there.
Gotcha. All right. So when we talk about how you're different than the lead generators, the marketers that do lead generation, explain, because you got to figure, my buddy down the block doesn't even really know what lead generation is versus your style of educational and why they would go with you versus like a lead gen company.
Right. So we're still, it is a great question, because we're still arguably doing lead generation, but through a very different format. So when I say lead gen, I mean more of where you're running a campaign that's looking to get potential claimants today. And so it's your advertisements are going to focus more on, were you injured? Do you fit this? Is this your situation? Whether it's sex abuse, NEC, a car accident, or a traumatic brain injury, it's saying, hey, is this your situation? If so, we might be able to help. Call us now, or fill out this form, or email us, whatever it is. You're asking someone, you're saying, hey, if you've been injured, If this is your situation, call us. And so that's what when I say lead gen, it's just about looking like, hey, we're putting in money today and we're hoping for calls today, maybe tomorrow, but like it's meant to be something that's a very quick turnaround. When with education-based marketing, we're still looking at the ROI. It's not that it's like, oh, hey, we're just spend money, like it's good. We're still looking at the ROI, but it's a much, much lower volume of higher quality cases. So we still have to generate cases, but our clients aren't judging us on, we gave you 10 grand and we needed 50 leads. We look at a 1, 2, 3 year like perspective and go, oh, look, here's an attorney who's been with us for 3 years and has over an 11x ROI. Okay, that's great. But if he had judged us on the number of leads we generated in year 1, he would have fired us. But we understood this is about, and so the education-based marketing is just it's just the whole field of marketing. That's the idea. We're going to share knowledge with the intent to create credibility and trust. And so this can look like, I mean, it's infomercials, our education-based marketing. This is not new to us. It's been around for decades, used on all kinds of mediums and in all kinds of industries. So there's nothing gimmicky or new about it, but it's just this idea that I'm going to educate you because I know that in the future, when you need me, I'm much more likely to be the one you call. And so it's a longer term play. When you do education-based marketing, there's still lots of metrics to track and have accountability. It's not just a matter of like, spend this money and we hope it does well for you. But it is a longer term focus. So the education-based marketing, longer play, lead generation is, I'm getting people inquiring today, tomorrow, next week with a potential case. And I'm going to measure it like I want to spend $500 to get these calls, or $250 or whatever. And so that's lead generation, where you're really just focused on, I put in X amount of dollars. I need, Y number of calls to make this worth it. That's lead gen. And my crude explanation there.
Okay, so let's say somebody calls you up and, you know what, listen, I'm interested. I want, the long-term partnership, which I like a lot. I think that people that come in and they just want instant results, even if you do get the instant results, it's not really the solution as far as I'm concerned, in terms of like building on what you're doing and what you will do. So I'm assuming that if I go with you and you're going to build out this educational platform, it would sort of be like a turnkey thing where you would take my website and, at least showcase the fact that I'm involved in this, and whatever else type of social media I'm doing would bring that into play.
Yeah. So with these, we have almost like a miniature little ecosystem we build out, and it's a combination. So you first start by promoting good educational content that's tied to the law firm, but then we do email marketing, which it's funny. I mean, as a millennial, there's so many reasons I feel like what we do shouldn't work, because it's 2022 and we look at people, who are minors making extraordinary sums of money through TikTok as an influencer. It feels like free, like, so we give out free reports. Like, it seems so antiquated for 2022, and yet it works. So we do our due diligence to test out different strategies to make sure we're not sitting back letting change happen. But we use free reports that feature the law firm, that say, hey, basically, I understand this, because what the consumers don't realize is that it matters which attorney you hire. They don't like that. And it's a general thing. People don't know. I mean, maybe they intuitively know, like, surely there's a difference, but how do you discern the difference as a consumer? And so we help our clients stand out from the crowd by demonstrating the expertise. But then people get on this email list where we email them every week, based to help demonstrate that expertise. Again, we have 20 to 40% open rates on these emails.
Yeah.
Again, my poor millennial brain has a hard time comprehending that PI focused emails are getting 40% open rates. But and then we're doing retargeting. So we're staying in front of people. So what happens is you basically pull people into this little ecosystem, and then we're staying in front of them, and retargeting and email marketing is very cheap. So it's just the cost of getting people into the system. And that's the beauty of it, is that you're staying in front of people, you're staying in touch with them, you're connecting with them. And by doing that, you just establish a different relationship than they have with the other attorneys.
All right. So that's like the funnel, right?
Yeah.
All
Yep.
right. So, I mean, I grew up a funnel. That was the way that I was able to drink
Yeah.
3 beers really quickly. I'd be like, you know, and I'd just shoot
Exactly.
them, right?
Right. Right.
But this is a
Precisely.
different funnel. It's a
Yes. Different
funnel.
kind of funnel. It's
Okay.
it's a little more metaphorical,
Yeah.
or
Yeah. No, you don't get the DUI and pay a
Right.
lawyer. This is
Exactly.
different. Okay. So let's say, you know, you're one of my colleagues or somebody else in that situation where you're like, I got to do something. And you're listening to this NEC. I mean, how am I going to do an NEC case? What are the lawyers that market through you? Do they end up doing the actual cases, or do you know, how does that work out?
Yeah, so we're in this new, like, for us is a little, the NEC and what we're doing with sex abuse is all a little different. So like on NEC, we actually, if somebody wants to advertise NEC with us, they have to use our co-counsel firm.
Yeah.
So which is May Lightfoot. And so if somebody came to me and was like, hey Luke, I want to do NEC, I just say, hey, look, if you're wanting to work up these cases yourself, you still have, like, we're just saying we're partnering with this firm to make a really big impact on this litigation. So for us, if a person wanted to do in-house, they just have to sort that out with co-counsel, because that's for us the access, because they're the ones investing with us to build out this very unique campaign. So it's a little bit of a range of folks, everybody who just wants to basically be an investment lawyer in the sense of like putting up front on the money, and then there will be folks who want to be more active in the litigation themselves.
And I'm involved in, I think, 15 different campaigns. NEC, I started a little bit. It's hard to get some traction, you know, Roundup and all that stuff. And all of my cases I send out to different firms, and, you know, I get to know them. It's a great way to get to know them. You know, you get your feet in, you know, at some point, maybe you do want to ramp it up and handle it yourself. So it's a good way to start to make that transition. And you might love it. You might, you know, you just sending the cases out to these law firms that are really excellent law firms, top of the food chain. And they're the ones that are trying the cases. Like Brian Ailstock is going bananas with 3M. He just hit a $75 million verdict. I don't know. I'm hoping it's one of my cases, but I'm not crossing. You know, 280,000 cases. Who knows? But all right. So the firm that you said that you're working with on the NEC, May Lightfoot.
Yes.
How do I spell Maye?
May, and then Lightfoot. Yeah, is one word. There's two last names there.
And I'll put a link in the show notes to them in case anybody wants to check out their credentials and all. But I know if it's coming through you, this firm must be outstanding. All right, now I want to shift over to really, you know, a big topic with a lot of lawyers that I talk to about this, which is the ethics of doing this. How can you do this? How is this ethically, you know, permissible? So let's talk about, you know, the bad players and what they're doing and how you're not doing that, and why lawyers just should not jump on that first glossy email that they get from some legal marketing company that they don't know about. Like, how could that go wrong? How could they send me an email? It's a newsletter. It looks good.
Man, so let me tell you a painful story. We've always done everything in-house, and long story, much shorter, we were using another agency for some of our buys, and some of the things we were placing out there that was outside of social. Moral of the story is we will never again use a third party, because we have, like, for us, we have this real high, like, integrity to make sure we're, like, even our sense of ethics with when it comes is both. You have the bar ethics, but then you also have the ethics of, like, hey, when we write ads, we're impacting people. So when we talk about sex abuse, we want to normalize the conversation to talk about sex abuse. Even if the people seeing the ads aren't a survivor, they don't have a claim, we want to normalize the conversation. So when we think about our writing, it has to encompass this broad ethics idea of both the how do we show up in the world, and also the bar requirements of whatever the individual states are that we're working with. So we had this agency that I will not name, that we were partnering with to do some buys. And this group, I don't know, it's painful to admit that basically, I don't think we knew how to properly vet another agency to partner with them at the time. And which is why I'll just never do it again to simplify that problem. but they were, I think, using another vendor who was sending out fraudulent text messages. We're not talking about like a little like gray area. They were sending out text messages on behalf of our client, that with a fake law firm name, telling them to click here for their talc settlement now to get their cash in hand.
Yeah.
And it was, so like what happens, of course, our client gets something in the mail, in the mail, and it's like, what is going on? And we rectified the whole situation, but it was a mess. And it was the thing for me that realized I cannot trust people the way I want to trust them when it comes to legal advertising. And that sounds, I don't even love saying that, but I realize like there's so many people who are not, because you can make money so easily in this space, because there's so much money flying left and right. You can show up and get checks and have no integrity. And I was naive. I no longer am naive in that way anymore. But so I tell that story to be like, this was an agency used by lots of other people. This was an agency that, because of who recommended it to us, is probably why we didn't vet them more rigorously. And it was just this situation where we realized like we need to actually, because it was under our name, this fraud was committed, even though it was another vendor and then whatever the heck their situation was. So I tell that to be like, just be cautious, because just because your friend is using an agency and they're trusted, don't assume that they're actually doing the right work. There's a lot of questions to ask of making sure you see ethically, you need to see, from a bar ethics standpoint, you need to see every single ad that is out there under your name that your dollars are putting out. And so like I thought we had done that, but apparently there were things this agency was doing that hadn't been told to us. And so it's kind of about rooting around and digging around and asking questions, and then asking to also see it, in the wild. And our clients will ask that. And I'm always, we build a lot of our ad campaigns in our clients' accounts. So then it's like, look, you want transparency? It's right there, like done. And but this other agency was doing things that were just straight up fraud, not even just questionable, but it was fraud. And it was frustrating. And further, this agency didn't really want to take responsibility. We took full responsibility with our client, made it right. But here's this other agency that's doing genuinely unethical, fraudulent behavior that's making excuses. And so I want to fully join your encouragement for other lawyers to be hesitant about just hiring agencies. And even if that makes it harder for me to land a deal, that's fine, because I do believe it's so important for the marketing and messaging for lawyers to be held not just to the bar ethics standard, but to a standard of how do we elevate the conversations around lawyers in this country. Because of the propaganda perpetuated by insurance companies, people feel that, beyond the ambulance chaser, PILMA did a research study at the end of 2021. They released this research. It was like 25,000 consumers on injury lawyers and their perceptions. They highlighted how so many people, they worry about hiring an injury lawyer that either they might like, are they a bad person? But they also worry about what their friends and family would think. And so when we think about the conversation in America around attorneys and advertising, it's so much, you got to follow your local ethics, but then I'm saying, let's hold it to a higher standard that says, how are we actually communicating to people who don't need our services? Do they see our ads and just go irrelevant? Or do they see our ads and go, that person's greedy and they're just, creating frivolous lawsuits? Obviously we can't control what people think, but we can certainly write in a way that invites people to see that lawyers are superheroes, and that's our approach. So that was a long, like windy,
That's
tour
good. That's
for you.
good. But even in your, like, when and I'm going to put a drop to Russell Media, I think the quote was something, when you were talking about who you are, one of the notations was that you are long-winded like me, but I like that. You got something to
Yes.
say. You're not repeating yourself. And it's an important thing. People, there's been, I don't even know, tens of thousands of people that, I don't like lawyers, I don't like the legal system, and they've been injured and harmed, and they need compensation, and they just say, forget about it. And you're not doing yourself a favor, you're not doing anybody a favor except for the bad actor that caused the harm. they get off the hook. Yeah, you know, they
Yep.
might even factor that into their whole business model. Well, 50% of the people aren't going to go after us, so we can make a huge profit. No, you gotta take a step back. The world is changing. Ethics, transparency. That's why I'm bringing Luke on here. There are other marketers that are outstanding also. Don't think that it's like every marketer is up to
Right.
no whatever.
No,
But
there's a lot of good agencies.
the point is that transparency, you need to know what your marketer is doing, because if you're the lawyer and you're just writing a check to Luke or whoever else, and they're off and about, you know, in some chat room or whatever, you're on the hook. You, the
Yeah.
lawyer, are on the hook. You can't say,
Yeah.
oh, I didn't know. No, you know everything that your marketer is doing. So, all right, before I get onto your podcast, I want to remind everybody also that you do single event stuff. It's not just the NEC and the clergy stuff. So let's say, I mean, so you're national, right? You market nationally.
Yep.
And all right, so let's say I'm in Arkansas and I want to do motorcycle cases, which I like, but they're so expensive in the marketing world, whatever. Do you do that?
Yeah, that's our best campaign, is our motorcycle accidents. We've been running those since 2016, generating six-figure fees for our clients for what's that put us 6 years now.
Yeah,
We
nice.
generate like we have so like when you ask about motorcycles, that's one of our flagship case studies. We have an example of a lawyer. It's actually even a better ROI now, but at the time of when we conducted the case study, it was 33 months total, $132,000 investment over 33 months between us and Facebook, and our client had resolved cases that put him at 1.4 million in fees. Yeah, not bad. And it was like motorcycle. Now, I will say his cost per case then, he had 12 cases. So, because people are like, how much does a case cost? I'm like, well, it's so different in the education-based marketing world. So if you're like, wow, this attorney spent, 12 grand per case, it sounds like a lot of money until you look at a 10.7x ROI. And it's like, well, not bad. And so, yeah, we do motorcycle accidents. That's like I said, that's the one we've been doing the longest. And nursing home abuse and neglect is the one we started, I think, around 2018. Can't remember if it was 17 or 18, but.
So, and just normal auto accident cases, Social Security.
We don't do Social Security right now. That's on our, it might be something we do maybe in 2023, but that's not on our radar for this year. The hard part with Social Security disability is the ROI difference. You don't have the same like case values. And so when it comes to education-based marketing, and you have some of these are pretty substantial cases, and on PI, people might be a little more meticulous in who they hire when they have that big case. And so education-based marketing seems to appeal to that type of individual or that type of situation. And so, if you spend 50 grand a year on a campaign with us and you get a couple of cases for PI, it's easy to make it worth it. SSD is just because it's different model. I'm not sure if we're the right fit. I know I've been asked, we might explore it, but I don't know if we're the right fit for that.
Okay, so now let's shift over to your podcast. You're a busy guy. You're all over the place, literally all over the place. And yet you had the time to put out this podcast, Lawful Good Podcast.
Yes.
And this is not like this kind of show where I'm, showing lawyers and law firms how to improve their bottom line or how to be a better lawyer. I mean, there's 1,000 of these podcasts all over the place. Not that, there's anything wrong with that, but you took a little bit of a different angle. Talk about your show. How did it start? What's the idea? And give us some highlights.
Yeah. So Lawful Good, it's a show about lawyers and the trials they face inside and outside the courtroom. That was actually our first tagline we wrote, and none of the others could, we didn't like any others as well. And so this all started January 1st in 2021. I was just sitting there thinking about the year and marketing and what do we want to do different this year. And I thought, like, how can, I wanted to create something that affirmed lawyers as lawyers. So I have a history where when I was at age 17, I was in such despite having so many relationships, beautiful relationships in my life and having a good life on almost every account, I was in a dark place and came to the brink of suicide. And so I know that loneliness and that pain of self-hatred and isolation. And I came into this PI industry, one, not knowing what it was, and quickly falling in love with it. And then it's an industry that has high rates of mental health challenges and illnesses ranging from substance abuse and high rates of depression and suicide. And I was like, I want to do something that, one, I want it to help us as a business. Like, yes, we're still marketers, and it's also, the podcast is an extremely expensive investment compared to a lot of other things we do. And I wanted to do something that affirmed lawyers as lawyers, that said, hey, you know what? You are beautiful people making a beautiful impact on the world. And so I've thought for years about doing a podcast, but I was like, I'm not going to keep interest in something if I'm talking about marketing. I love marketing, and it's fun to go on and talk on a show like this, but I don't want to talk about it week after week after week, because that's a lot of time. But I love people. I can talk to people every day. Well, I do. I love people. That's and so we were like, but I wanted it to be beautiful, rich, and something a little different in the legal space. It's not unique within podcasts or interviews, but I follow a podcast called How I Built This by Guy Raz. He maybe has like 3.5 million weekly listeners. Not too shabby.
Pretty good. Yeah. A couple more than me. Not that many.
Yeah, right. Same. And so, but he has these beautiful interviews with CEOs from around, with all the biggest companies, and he goes into their stories, and I loved it. I was like, this is great. I want to dig into people's stories as lawyers, and I want to show this like shared humanity. And so that's really was this whole impetus behind this show, was let's tell people stories and show the complexity within them. So like, I love when I interviewed John Morgan, I thought, because a lot of people have opinions about John, because I don't know why. Some people, whether it's because of the size of his firm, or I don't know, they don't like his personality. Some people are like, he came into my market and ruined my life, and whatever. People got all their stories.
Yeah.
And I was like, if you listen to my interview with John, no matter what you think about him, I'm pretty sure you'll, like, even if you do dislike him, you'll dislike him a little less, because you listen to it and you go, wow, this is a human with beautiful, complex experiences. And we've done that and we have people on our show very intentionally who are like well-known, and people who aren't, because again, like for us, we value diversity, and that means having diversity of all kinds, not just race, not just gender, but also looking at age, looking at how known people are. So we have everybody from like solo shops to the Morgans and Shanaras and the Papantonios on the show. But that's how it came to be. And it's
And you
really,
love it. And you love
I
it.
love it. I just interviewed Alexander Shanara yesterday, and it was so fun. And it's like, what was fun about that one is, one, I've gotten better at interviewing. Mike Papantonio was the first person I interviewed in my life.
Yeah.
I'd never conducted an interview before. And if you go back to that, you'll listen to it and be like, wow, it's good. And I'm comfortable saying that because it's our whole process. We spent, no joke, on Mike's, because Mike was the first one I ever interviewed. We had never done a podcast before. We didn't know what we were doing. We spent roughly 100 hours from start to finish on that episode. Now, if you listen to it, you might be like, wow, 100 hours. Like, Luke, it's good, but it's not that great. I'm like, well, because we didn't know what we were doing. I listened to his episode somewhere around 10 times, literally 10 times, in the editing process, as we were figuring out, what do we want this to sound like? What do we want to be edited? But anyway, so that's it's a blast. It's fun. Lawyers seem to really love and appreciate it. And I regularly hear people tell me like, Luke, that was the best interview of my life, the best experience, or that was one of the best, or that was life-changing, or so insightful. And people have been really, really excited about it. So I'm glad that people have that experience on the show.
All right. So now if I go, I'm going to be dropping your information on the show notes, and I'm going to see that there's a little slot to click on the podcast.
Yep.
You've done 3 seasons, but if I look at the third season, it says trailer, but like March 8th. So did you get so busy? You're like, let everybody know that you didn't disappear, and it's not the end of the show, which is what I was worried about. Like, oh my God, how can I talk about the show? It's no more.
Yeah. So we were wanting to, the original plan was to roll out season 3 in March. But getting, we're not a huge agency. And so we're busy with client projects, and we're busy with the interviews and the editing. That takes up a lot of time. And we have 2 different editors and 1 sound engineer, and coordinating that whole process. And we do pre-interviews. So like, there's people, our producer Kirsten interviews 3 to 5 folk from our guest life before the interview. Like, it's such a huge process for one episode. and we're at this point, I think we're at 16 or 17 interviews completed for season 3. There are, I think about a dozen of them are already edited. We're sitting on it, but it's just been like, to be able to get the marketing behind it. It's just, we basically kept kicking the launch date back. We are launching June 8th as Wednesday. It's actually the 1-year anniversary of our launch in 2021. So that's kind of fun. We didn't actually pick it for that reason, but it just happened to be. So it's coming. It is coming. We've got an incredible lineup of beautifully diverse humans. I'm really excited about it.
Nice. I am too. All right. So I think that wraps it up.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you wanted to throw out there? I want you to say hello to Eva, who I haven't talked to in a while, or whatever. And I'm always proud. I'm not proud, but I'm always happy when I can actually remember somebody's name. Because I was growing up as a little kid, I can never remember anybody's name. But
no, I don't have it. I just tell people, come check out the podcast, lawfulgoodpodcast.com. We're on the regular places like Apple Podcasts, Google, Spotify. But it's gonna be a really buckle in. I'll tell you, episode 1 of season 3 is with Julia Metz. And you might want to have a tissue box nearby, because get ready. It's beautiful, it's complex, and I go wherever the guests want to go. And so but it's going to be a wild ride for season 3. Buckle up.
Yeah, I am a big crier, but I never have tissue. I just, I do that. But either way, it doesn't matter.
Yep.
All right, so that does it for this episode, folks. Here's my CTA call to action. You're a lawyer, you're not sure where you're going, you need to diversify. Think of your law firm like as an investment portfolio. Maybe you are banging it out there doing accident cases, but you know what? You need to diversify. I want you to call Luke Russell and say, Luke, how can you help me? Where can you take me? Maybe you are desperately needing help. Maybe you just started out. Maybe you're 30 years old. You got, you passed the bar, but you're like a C student. You're like opening up your law firm and you're like, I need cases. Call Luke. All right. So show notes, you're going to get all the information, and that's it for this episode of Cut to the Chase. Everybody have a good day. Luke, thanks for dropping by. All right.
Thank you so much, Greg. This is a delight.
Okay, man. Be well.